Caryn, it's 2024, and we live in a globalized world. Most of us work in global companies. Are cultural differences still relevant?
Absolutely. I think there's a tendency to think that we're all the same, but I like the expression same, but different. We raised differently, we educated differently, and that's a very positive thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you know, because you come with 20 years of experience in the field, and you've worked with all kinds of cultures, all kinds of backgrounds. But my question is, isn't this generalizing a little bit? Aren't you promoting stereotypes in a way?
Yeah, and you have to be very careful of generalizations and stereotypes. But I like the word tendencies. If you look at North American culture, there's definitely a tendency to be more process-oriented. If you look at Israeli culture, then the tendency is more for improvisation and changing things as you go along.
Okay, so tendencies aren't stereotypes, and that is like spot on. Because I was born here, but raised bilateral. So I was sure that I'd blend right in any Anglo society. And when I flew to Canada when I was 21 to camp, I realized that knowing the language does not mean knowing their cultural nuances.
Right. So I always love like to say in my workshops, you need to go from culture to culture and not language to language. You know, so if you look at like Hebrew is a very direct language.
Yeah, they would say pass me the salt, which is like
right.
a translation.
There's no could you, would you, schmould you going on over here.
When we talk about tendencies, we work a lot with Israelis and Americans working together. So the R&D team would be in Israel and the customer-facing team would be in the US. So what kind of tendencies do each group have?
Typically, North Americans need more detail, more content, so they're constantly finding that they have to pull information towards them. Israelis don't need a lot of detail and a lot of information to get going, right? They get what they assume is enough, and then they start to work and they pull the information. They'll send an email, they'll pick up the phone, they'll physically go stand next to the person to get the information that they want. So what happens is that like the North American can feel that the Israelis not giving them all the information deliberately, and then it creates a trust issue. And the Israelis are always, well, why didn't they ask me? If they would have asked, I would have told them.
So Israelis should put more information out there and Americans should be ready to pull more information?
Definitely. That's the best combination.
Yeah, I heard you say that it's not like one culture has to compromise, but more like two of the cultures have to meet each other halfway. So how can each side meet each other halfway?
If Israelis would be aware more of softening and padding the language, then that can get a great result.
During my workshops, I've heard complaints of Israelis saying that they find it hard to read Americans, like to understand what they're thinking.
Yeah, because there's a lot of nuances, right? There's a lot of things that are implied, and then that can be confusing. Keeping in mind for any culture where English is not the first language, when you imply things, it can lead to misunderstandings. So I encourage a more direct type of communication. You know, certainly when you colleagues working together, then you have to meet each other halfway. It's when the client's from another culture, then you have to make every effort to do it their way. So that's important.
Before we wrap it up, what is the winning tip that you could give anyone who's struggling with cultural differences?
Well, I wish it was mine, but it's not, okay. During COVID, I followed Matt Mullenweg, he's the CEO of Automatic, and he had this brilliant abbreviation, API, Assume Positive Intent. When you work with different cultures, different languages, different time zones, different areas of expertise, there's gonna be miscommunication. There are gonna be moments where it gets very frustrating. And if you just go back to that API, Assume Positive Intent, you'll get a good result.
We started with culture matters and we're finishing with people matter. Because at the end of the day, that's what we do. That's our job.
It's very much part of Barry Katz, right?
Yeah.
It's all about people. And sure, understanding the cultural differences is one part of the process. But seeing the person and adjusting to the person in front of you, that's what's really going to make the difference.
These were wonderful insights, Caryn. Thank you so much.